Welcome back. You're watching The Firm. Before I left for Davos, I caught up with the CEO of Grant Thornton International, Ed Nussbaum, to talk about how the audit business will change once the new company law comes into force. Mr. Nussbaum says the audit business is going to go through a structural shift in India. Listen in.
There is more scrutiny already on the auditing profession. There are reforms being discussed in Europe, certainly reforms proposed by the European Commission. The companies bill here impacts auditors, and there's proposals in the U.S. and China. Everywhere in the world, people are looking at the role of the auditors, how you improve independence, how you constantly improve quality. So I think the auditors are already under more scrutiny to make sure that we're doing high-quality work and increase the quality coming out of the crisis.
All right, let me get down to some of the specific India-related questions that I have. As you know, we have a companies bill that has been passed or voted on in the lower house of Parliament and will hopefully be voted on in the upper house in a few weeks to come from now. That bill recommends or proposes that there be rotation of audit firms, not just audit partners, but audit firms. Now, this is a concept that has been gaining currency across the world. We've seen the EU study this to great depth. We've seen the PCAOB put out discussion papers last year. What do you make will be the impact of audit rotation?
Well, it's clearly a trend throughout the world. The regulators throughout the world are moving towards audit firm rotation. There is a feeling that if the auditor has been the same auditor in some cases for 50 or 100 years, that that's too long of a relationship and that it's become too cozy, and there's a perception, certainly, if not reality, that the auditor's too close to the companies that they're auditing. And so, therefore, mandatory audit firm rotation is being discussed or proposed almost everywhere in the world. I think it is something that is a reality of where the regulators are going. I think it makes sense to test it, as the rules are developed, to maybe try it with some of the larger companies first, see the lessons that we learn. It's only being applied to listed companies, in some cases only the largest of listed companies. But I think mandatory firm rotation does have an impact on the relationship and certainly the perceived independence and objectivity of the accounting firm.
Well, you keep making the point, Mr. Nussbaum, that it could potentially fix the perception that there is a lack of scrutiny or skepticism when it comes to audits or a lack of independence. Do you think that in reality it will not go the required distance in enhancing both audit independence as well as audit skepticism?
Well, I think it can create more independence. I think there is a time period after some period of years where the auditors, in some cases, not in every case, and hopefully not in too many cases, get too close to the companies. I think each audit is unique. Each situation is unique. So in some cases, I think audit firm rotation will not impact independence and objectivity, but in other cases it may.
Well, the other proposal in the Companies Bill 2012 that has irked auditors is the limit that it places on the number of companies that an audit partner can audit. And that limit it has proposed be at 20, inclusive of all kinds of companies. Now, that's going to clearly change how audit firms approach clients, how many clients they can take on, and the number of people they will need depending on the number of clients they have. Your views on this proposal?
Well, this is not something we see in a lot of jurisdictions around the world, but certainly it is in the Companies Bill, and again, I'm sure it'll be passed. Overall, the concept makes sense to put some limits around the number of companies that can audit, but it can't be a one-size-fits-all solution. Again, if I were writing the rules, as you implement it, I would put some size restrictions on it. So let's say a limit of 20 companies over a certain size. I don't know what the right size is, whether it's 1 billion or some other number, but it is a complicated situation because some companies have multiple subsidiaries, and how it gets applied to the subsidiaries and all the related entities could cause some problems, because obviously you would have a single partner do all of those audits, even though they may require statutory audits in many countries around the world. So how it gets applied is critical. The rules that get established and rules and regulations under the Companies Bill will make a huge difference, but the concept makes a lot of sense.
Well, you're right in that the rules are eagerly awaited and they could very well narrow the impact of this specific proposal. But let me tell you what the audit head of Deloitte told me. He said that this is going to lead to audit dispersal. Would you agree with that?
Well, again, I think to the point that you made, when you look at a group of companies, and let's say Grant Thornton audits a group of companies, it's how the rules and regulations are applied. If that group of companies is treated as one company, which it may operate as one, well, then this rule is not a problem. If that group of companies is treated as 20 or 30 companies, to break up that audit amongst different partners may not make any sense. It might actually reduce the quality of the audit. So a lot will depend on how the rules get written and how the regulations get applied. And there are some auditors that have very small clients. I'm not talking about Grant Thornton, but some smaller practitioners, smaller firms, sometimes sole practitioners, have extremely small clients, and you wouldn't want to apply those limits to those very small clients. It would be a tremendous burden on those firms.
Well, I must ask you this regarding the liability of auditors, Mr. Nussbaum, because that in a sense is again something that this bill enhances. It introduces for the first time class action suits in this country, and it includes in the list of those that shareholders can sort of file those class actions against auditors. It is or will result in a substantial enhancement of audit liability. I'd like your view on what you make of this.
Well, the audit business model is constantly evolving, and I think the limitation on non-audit services for audit clients has the biggest impact in many ways on our model.
Yeah, well, that's
if
right.
That provision is
it's
limited.
Interesting that you brought that up, Mr. Nussbaum. I should have brought that issue in as well. The fact that you can't offer certain services now to an audit client will also restrict your business model.
Yes. Yes. And that provision, if it's applied just to listed companies, and depending on how it's applied, it will change the business model. If it's applied to all companies, including private companies, and again, that'll hurt the smaller and mid-sized enterprises that I think most regulators are trying to protect. So it should only be applied to listed companies. But we saw provisions of that in Sarbanes-Oxley, which we've now been dealing with for a long time, 10 years, over 10 years, and it's worked out fine. It did change the business model within the U.S. for the accounting firms. They no longer could sell the big main IT projects to their audit clients, but then they started selling, and we started selling projects to not our audit clients, to other people's clients. So overall, I don't think that is as bad as some people make it out to be, as long as it's applied in the right way. So the limitation has worked in the U.S. There are proposals in Europe from the European Commission, again, to limit non-audit services for audit clients. It seems to be the way the world is moving, and again, I don't think it's necessarily bad.
Ms. Nussbaum, let me club all these issues. So audit firm rotation will hurt your client, long-term client relationships. The limitation of 20 companies, regarding an audit partner, that could again reduce productivity to some extent. And then you've got the limitation on non-audit services. Now clubbed together, this bill is going to have a substantial impact on audit firm profitability in India. Could you talk a little bit about how you see the audit business model change in the country?
Well, I'm glad to hear you're worried about our profits as a profession.
I'm not worried. I'm just curious.
I don't know that it'll necessarily be less profitable. I think it changes the business model, and we have to be flexible enough to change. So if there's 10-year rotation for some of the largest companies or for listed companies, whatever it may be, we'll have to be more adept at issuing proposals and working the market to get the proposals. We're not thrilled with having to do that every 10 years, but if that's the reality, that's the reality. With respect to the partner limitations, as you point out, it might reduce the productivity. If it's applied correctly just for larger companies, then I think it will be okay. And the limitation on non-audit services, like I said, it's just a matter of us being able to change our model to sell to other companies in the marketplace.
Edward Nussbaum, we appreciate you finding the time to speak with us here on The Firm. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
And that wraps up this edition of The Firm. I'll be back in Mumbai next week, so to warmer climes, see you then.